Good morning. It's always interesting when you're at the front and then a lot of people fill it in afterwards. How many of you, is this your first time ever hearing me speak? You have no clue who I am. Quick show of hands. Wow, a lot of people. Okay, let me give you a few minutes on me and we'll get going. It's always nice, by the way, to come back to a church. This is probably my fifth or sixth time at your church in the last 15 or so years. My name is Brett. I come from Ajax. If you don't know where Ajax is, it's about 45 minutes east of Toronto. I was actually at the airport yesterday at 3:30 a.m. my time, which is 1:30 a.m. your time. So if I yawn a few times, I apologize. My background is education. I was a teacher with the Toronto District School Board for 9 years. And during that time, speaking kind of grew, and I left that and became a full-time speaker back in 2004. And I've done that full-time up until about 3 years ago, where I went back and took my master's in counseling, and I do psychotherapy half-time, and I do this half-time, trying to figure out what that kind of looks like now. I want to begin with two quotes. Maya Angelou, social activist and poet, once said, "Do the best you can until you know better, and when we know better, we do better." I assume every one of you here today, who struggles or who doesn't, we want to be the best we can in this conversation. Second quote is from a futurist. He's someone who goes in and helps companies look 15, 20 years down the road. And Alvin Tollefson says this: "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who can't read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." I would put forth we need an incredible unlearning in our conversation of mental health. The one thing I've heard now for probably my entire career is, as I travel and speak on mental health, the church has hurt me more than it's helped me. We are supposed to be the hope of the world, and to hear that from thousands and thousands of people, I just say we can be better. And I often say it's easy in worship to raise our hands. What's hard sometimes in life is to do this: God, I give you everything. And so today I just want you to not cling to, but hold loosely all our views and thoughts and ideologies on mental health. And we're gonna tip a few of them off today, and we're gonna cling desperately to some others. I'm married with 2 kids. My wife's name is Dawn. She's a nurse. I will say my kids are appalled. I use this picture. They're about 4 years older than they are now. My daughter graduated university last year. She's worked for the last few summers at the Banff Springs Hotel, which has been amazing to visit. She heads to law school in September, which is amazing. And my son Ben is in 4th year university at a school called Queen's in Kingston. And he wants to be a psychotherapist, to which he reminds me always, I stole his dream, which I did. I went into this later in life. He's always wanted to do this. And our favorite family member is Phoebe. Phoebe is our English bulldog, who's the best part of any moment of our day. So for all of you here, there's 3 types of you. First, it's those of you who are looking at me right now, and you deal with this. You struggle with mental health in any way, shape, and form. And I would say, that's me. That's also why I'm sitting. I left teaching. I did a program called the Aero Leadership Program. I then did a master's degree of evangelism and leadership down at a school called Wheaton in Chicago. I then had to pay for that. And so I was speaking 300, roughly, speaking dates a year. And every one of my friends and my family told me to slow down, and I said, I'll be okay. And I graduated, and I began having weird issues speaking. I'd be walking across the stage, and then I'd feel like I'm gonna pass out. I was in Camrose, Alberta at a retreat, and I packed up and left when I had my first panic attack. And if you know Ontario, I was at a camp called Lakeshore Pentecostal Camp, supposed to speak, and I collapsed in a McDonald's parking lot, and then didn't leave my house for 5 months, and then didn't work for an entire year. It was 13 years ago, and I'm still unwell. This is my Aura ring, which tells me each morning how little deep sleep I get. It's usually 4 to 8 minutes. And 54 doctors later, I get called an anomaly and many other questions, but for some of you, you were like me. You have a journey, you have a struggle, and for some of you, you've never told anyone. Then there's those of us who are here, and it's our friends, our family, our spouses, our coworkers who journey with these things. And I would want to put forth a new conversation, which is how do we maybe try to prevent some of these things? We cannot prevent them all, but is there some things that we could do? It's Frederick Douglass, the American social reformer and abolitionist, who once said, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. I would add in, and women, to that conversation. I remember when I had my breakdown and I'm stuck at home, this image is just one of those perfect ones for me. Each person would come into my house, and I kind of say, sort of like Job's friends, they would offer me options, right? They would say to me, have you tried? And then put a line, right? So they would say, have you tried Jesus? And I would say, what do you mean by that? And they're like, Jesus. And I'm like, I know Jesus. What do you mean by have I tried Jesus? And then they would leave, and then I would weep and cry, like, Jesus, have I not tried you enough? The next person would come in and say, have you tried vitamin D? Like, vitamin D and Jesus are very different things. Both are very important. And the next person would say, have you tried running? And I'd be like, I haven't left the house in 5 months. They're like, but have you tried running? I call this whack-a-mole. You ever been to like a fair and the little mole pops up and watch like a 10-year-old smash it down? I often felt like it took everything in me to have someone over or to get into a church or work again, and then something someone said just felt like a kind of whack-a-mole. So I have a short period of time today, and we're going to look at just a few things. First off, mental health versus mental illness, which we use the same terminology, but they're different. Number two, what do you actually do? I want to give you like the first steps you do if you are here and you are struggling. Look at how our faith plays a role. I want to give you some practical application, and then we're done. And when I say we're done, this is where I really want to pass it back to you, where you head back into life and work and family and whatever, hopefully looking at this maybe from a different perspective. There's a book by Chip and Dan Heath called The Power of Moments, and I just love the thought of this is your faith and your mental health and everything is built in moments, and the goal this morning is to be one of those moments. It's a book by Stephen Grekvich who says, herein lies one of the most pervasive misunderstanding regarding mental illness. It's that God spares this kind of pain and suffering from those with deep and abiding faith. I am not unwell because I do not have a deep and abiding faith in Jesus, but I am unwell. And there's interesting tensions as we get into theology of suffering and any things, but if we don't understand mental illness and how it affects people, we can't then help people. Henry Cloud once said, if you're filled with the Spirit, you will always be happy, in no pain or have any struggles. Then he paused and went, well, that can't be farther from the truth, can it? So mental health versus mental illness. When I say I struggle with anxiety or mental health, none of you think, oh, he has seasonal affective disorder, even though many of us might also struggle with that. Mental health is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of well-being in which we can, realize potential, cope with normal stresses. We don't live with normal stresses right now. Like the things we just prayed for, right? There's wars around, there's politics, there's so many things that are affecting us. We can work productively and fruitfully, and we can make a contribution to our community. Every single one of you in this room has mental health, just like you all have physical health. I would also say with anxiety and depression, we need to get away from pathologizing everything. If you had to come up this morning and lead worship or pray, or if you do a presentation at work or school this week and your hand shakes a little bit, it's okay, right? That's absolute normal anxiety we all have. It does not mean you have an anxiety disorder. But when you're watching TV tonight and your heart's palpitating and you don't know why, maybe we've crossed a line. And depression's the same. Anybody find the last few days with the sun, it's warmer, everyone's smiling, we're all walking outside and talking, but a few weeks ago in Ontario, it was cloudy all week and everyone was a bit blah. Doesn't mean you have depression, but when you don't feel joy anymore, there's something going on. And I say we pathologize everything. Everyone who disagrees with you isn't a narcissist. Like, we use terminologies way too much. But if this is one axis, another one would be mental illness. Mental illness is a range of conditions which there's these standard criteria to diagnose them, and you're diagnosed by certain people who can do that. Doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, not YouTube, not TikTok, not just some friend. I'm at a talk and a young girl walks up, 15, 16, and she says, she was chatting, she's shaking a bit, and she says, so I have bipolar. And I said, I'm so sorry. I said, that's big. I said, where'd you get diagnosed? And she said, oh, I wasn't diagnosed. She said, Brett, I saw TikTok the other year, and I'm like, uh-oh. She said, the TikTok said, if you're happy sometimes and sad others, you have bipolar. And I'm like, or you're human. Every single one of you, maybe even today already, has felt happy and sad a few minutes. It doesn't mean you have some condition, but for 2 years, she'd lived her life as somebody with bipolar. And then a church in the UK sent me this, and I kind of like it. It's this idea that even though I struggle with high mental illness, I can work at having good high mental health. It takes a second to think that through that. But it's just like if you're here today and you're struggling with something physical, you can still work at having good mental health inside that. I'm 53. If you're kind of my age, you've watched this incredible rise in these kinds of anxiety and depression and other things. And the question is are we just catching it earlier? Do we just have a greater knowledge of it? Are we struggling more? Somebody once said to me, mental illness is really simple. And I said, simple? It's the most complex thing that I ever talk about. For some of you in this room, you struggle because of predisposition. It does not mean, though, if your grandparent has something, you will. But it's no different than if someone comes from certain medical conditions. We change our diets, our exercise, what we do. Some of you have had traumatic events, abuse. We've experienced homelessness, neglect, abandonment, war, PTSD. The list goes on. For some of you, and this is where I think I play in, is burnout or breakdown. We worked too hard for too long and something broke. Isolation and loneliness, chronic unwellness, substance use, social media and dopamine, and you can come back tonight or we'll be doing the same talk tomorrow, the idea of social media and dopamine. Every time my watch taps me, every time my phone buzzes, you get a dopamine hit to your brain. What does 500,000 dopamine hits do to a human? We don't know. But you're all the experiment. By the way, not just students, right? Adults and everybody else. The relentless pressure we put on people. We have brutal diets. We lack sleep. People struggling, like when women struggle with postpartum after having children, concussions. I have a few friends whose children, one fell playing basketball, one was hit playing football. Both now struggle with anxiety. And how you're parented. When I was here back in, I think it was 2022, I did my talk, Parenting, Navigating Everything. The more we overfunction as adults, do we want to guess what happens to our students? We create under-functioning students, which are now not prepared for the world that they then walk into. There are huge changes. This is from my media talk, and the ones that are purple are parenting, and the beigey ones are kind of more the media conversations, but all of these things affect mental health. All of them do. I'm not going to walk through all of these things, but like we've gone from driver's licenses with about 96% of us getting our licenses before we're 18 to around 42%. And dropping like a rock out of the fear that we as adults kind of put on our kids. Part-time jobs are down, dating is down, face-to-face interactions plummeted, and all kinds of other things have increased. But we'll walk through a bit of that tonight. These are 3 comics, but I find these interesting. The first one, someone's throwing up in a toilet. Probably haven't had that picture in church in your lifetime. Have you tried, not having the flu? Said no one ever to anyone throwing up in a toilet. Said to almost everyone who struggles with anxiety. Have you tried, not having it? Yeah, if we could think our way out of it, we would have, right? No one wants this. The middle person is just someone bleeding. It's like you're not even trying to stop bleeding. And the last one looks weird. It's a person giving themselves an insulin shot for diabetes. I don't think it's healthy. You have to take medication every day just to feel normal. Don't you worry, it's changing you from who you really are. Said to no one ever if you're taking heart medication or insulin for diabetes or something else, but said to almost everyone who takes medications. If we want to start somewhere, let's start with a foundation of we can all look at getting better, no matter who we are, no matter what we've gone through. And what's interesting to me is the number one question I get from Christians only, because I'm at a clinic which serves Christians and non-Christians. What about medicine? No one's ever come to me who doesn't know Jesus and said, can I take medications for what I'm dealing with? But it's a never-ending conversation when I'm in the church. If you have asthma all the way down to sleeping pills, no one cares. Here's what I mean by that. If you have asthma right now and you start having an asthma attack, we're going to call an ambulance if you don't take your blue Ventolin inhaler and you take it twice and you breathe very deeply. No one cares. We don't put a spirituality theology on it. But the moment we hit depression and anxiety, we become very polarized. I'll just say this. I do think we overprescribe medications first, and I think there's so many things to do before we look the medication route, but it's okay to not be okay. And if you need medication, it's okay. It's interesting. It was probably about, I think it was 7 years ago, I got diagnosed with Lyme disease. Some of you know Lyme, some of you don't. I have no idea when I was bitten by a tick. They believe it was when I lived in the rainforest as a 20-year-old. Anyways, I had to go on medications for Lyme, and if any of you know that world, it's a nightmare. And so I'm going on anti-malaria pills 3 times higher than what you'd ever take going traveling. And then I had to take huge amounts of antibiotics, and I posted online, hey, I need some prayers. I'm going on medications. I'm not doing well. Churches from all over posted these wonderful discussions and prayers for me. I posted the same post, but 13 years ago when I hadn't left my house in a while, and my doctor said, I think we need to try meds. We tried everything else. So I posted online, hey, I'd love some prayers, and people posted from all over the world. It was so humbling, but what no one saw were the private messages. Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people wrote me privately and said, if you touch a medication for this, you're not a Christian anymore. Just sit on that for a second. If you touch a medication for your mental health, you now don't believe in Jesus. Like, this is now, we believe in the Trinity, the resurrection, and not taking meds. Has that now become, we talk about majors and minors. We've now elevated minors so beyond, like, I question our theology of even what salvation is when you think of taking a med or not is now at that kind of place. If you have to take meds, by the way, Inagene.com is a really interesting, I was part of their pilot project at Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto years ago. This will actually do a DNA test on you and tell you what meds may or may not work for you, like green light, yellow light, red light. So mental health versus mental illness, what are some signs? How do you know if the people you love are struggling and journeying through this? Well, here's a whole bunch. Number one, changes in eating or sleeping patterns. But we all have changes in eating, sleeping patterns, right? This is hard to kind of understand. Social isolation. We are so beyond COVID now. We can start to really go, who are the people who are not here? Like, who are like the isolation and loneliness we can see. Mood changes, but as I've said earlier, every one of you has had one of these kinds of feelings this week. It doesn't mean it has to be, but if you experience these things a lot, maybe, you can't function, yeah, now we're in trouble. Apathy, loss of desire to do things. Substance abuse, and please don't say we're Christians, we don't have this in our church world. I'm inundated with men and women who are dealing with everything from drugs and alcohol and pornography, and the list goes on. I put this under a huge umbrella of self-harm. Self-harm is hurting yourself to get beyond overwhelming feelings, thoughts, and emotions, and people have learned some kind of maladaptive ways to cope, and they're heading down that pathway, so we can support and help and journey with people through this. Listen to the language of the loved ones around you. Self-deprecating, I'm so stupid, I'm so worthless, listen to those things. Sudden drop in grades, maybe, but here's the biggest, no signs. I cannot look around the room and go like, you're good, you're not, you're good. Like I struggle in here, and throughout my body, and I can smile anytime. And this is why we have to check in. It was always interesting in those COVID years, we did like these emoji check-ins online, and I want you to check in, but here's how I think we should check in. Ask, how are you, twice. How you doing? Good, good. You? Good. How's your weekend? Great. You? Fine. How you really doing? You ever done that? The second time, it's like everything switches. Oh, let me tell you. So what do? Research says it's very clear. What we do is we have wishful thinking or avoidance. We just don't address these topics. And the have you tried, by the way, I don't mind when someone says, have you tried something, but it has to be shrouded in kind of a, do you mind me giving you an idea, and this has worked for someone I love, it might work for you, not this is the only thing. I love body, mind, and soul. I'm a pragmatic person. I want a structure, I want an answer. Every church I've ever attended, I grew up Fellowship Baptist, I married a Pentecostal. That's not supposed to happen, I don't think, but and now we attend an associated gospel church. But the truth is this, every church I've ever attended, this is what's on the walls. I'm speaking at a church and I said, I believe in body, mind, and soul, and a man stood up and said, it's satanic, and began to yell at me. First off, that's not good for anyone. As a speaker with anxiety, even a bit worse. And so I took a big breath and kind of looked off to the side thinking, God help me to give a reply. And on the wall it says, meeting the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of our community. And I said to the guy, that's satanic? And he looked and he read it and he went, oh, my bad, and he sat down. I like this because it gives everyone, and everyone in here, I'm a kinesiology major by trade, I quickly go to the body. Quickly. Some of us in here are counselors or helpers, right? We love the mind and the thoughts, and think of, like I take it a bit out of context, but the renewing of your mind in Romans, you're ruminating on things, and we can give you some tips on how to not do that. And as faith-based people, here's what I just say. It might be emotional, it might be Sorry, it might be physical, it might be emotional, and just bear with me as I walk through this. I don't say it might be spiritual because it's unbelievably uncommon that the answer to mental illness is in faith. But my faith is the foundation of everything in life, everything in life. And so we build our faith as we journey. And it's not a competition between these things and God. Your issue might be physical, see a doctor. Your issue might be emotional, go see a therapist or someone else, and always build our faith. So I can hear someone asking already, well, don't we believe in healing? Yeah, God can do whatever he wants to do. Do all get healed? No. What do you do with that? Because here's what I hear from people. They feel blamed and condemned and shamed. Well, you didn't read your Bible enough. You didn't pray enough. I'm at a talk and a man walks up and begins to weep. He said to me, why is it not working? And I'm like, what are we talking about? He says, I went and saw my pastor. They said, all you need to get better is to read your Bible. He's reading his entire Bible every week. He's reading 8, 9, 10 hours a day. This is all he does. And months later, he's not better. And he's about to actually take his life. And this guy had so many other things going on, medical things, past history, all of these things. Ann Voskamp, the author, says this: miracles are never a function of anyone's goodness, their worthiness, or their earnestness. Miracles are always the mysteriousness of his ways. So I think that our faith is like the toolbox. And there's a thing we sometimes hear, it's called it's this idea. If all you have in your hand is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If all we have is theology, everything looks like a theological answer. But what I like is into the toolbox, we put tools, all kinds of very practical tools. And what we have then is a robust toolbox and a robust group of tools. And no matter where you land, we can all grow all of these things. Isn't that an interesting tension, though? I prayed every day for 13 years for healing. At the same time, I exercise every day, and I eat healthy, and I watch my caffeine intake, and I grow my faith, and the list goes on. So this is my journey, and I'm going to walk through body, mind, and soul very quickly. But I've had physicals done, I've had blood work done, I've seen a sleep specialist. Anyone seen a sleep specialist? Anyone willing to raise your hand? Whole bunch, okay. So if you don't know this, you go to it's usually like a strip mall somewhere with a Subway beside it, and you walk in with your pillow at 8 o'clock at night, and they put electrodes all over you, and then the last time I went, the guy's like, I'll be watching in that camera, good night. Why would you say that? First time I went, my doctor asked me to say to my sleep doctor in the morning, can you fix me? So I looked him in the face and I said, can you fix me? And he went, no. And I looked down, a little discouraged, and the doctor said, no, look at me, that's good. Of all the things it could be, where it's sleep, scratch it off. Sleep is your issue, but sleep isn't, there's nothing we can do here. You don't have sleep apnea or any of these other things. A friend of mine is a youth pastor here in Alberta. He has a full breakdown, very similar to me. His lead pastor says, it's spiritual. You will never go to a doctor. You will never take medications. We will pray for you. You will get better. First off, that's spiritual abuse, and it's not okay. We got to start standing up and say, that's just not okay. 5 months in, he calls me. He says to me as I pick up the phone, I'm not long for this world. And we begin to chat, and I'm like, what's your biggest issue? He says, sleep. And I'm like, would you just go to a sleep? There's nothing spiritual about a sleep clinic. If you hurt your knee, you're at a physiotherapist or a chiropractor or something. So he goes, and I said to him, look at the doctor in the morning and say, can you fix me? And the doctor went, yeah. You have the worst sleep apnea I've ever seen in my career. They put him on I call them Darth Vader machines, BiPAP, CPAP machines. He's better in 1 day. Assessment matters. Medicine, I'm not currently on any medication, but if I need it one day again, I will. I've had all these things, CAT scans, nutritionists. I've watched my caffeine intake, but the big three are exercise, sleep, and food. The Bible is filled with the physical analogies. Your body is the temple and running the good race, and we need to be the best we can in this. And so exercise is the gold standard for mental health. I don't care what you do. My wife plays pickleball. I do not like pickleball. I like spin classes. I lift weights, walking. Everyone should just be walking as much as they can. Sleep's the foundation of everything. You ever tried to have a really wonderful, robust time with Jesus in the morning and you stayed up really, really late to watch a hockey game or something else? Like, sleep's the foundation of things. And food is often the culprit or the cure. There was a study with grade 4 kids with anxiety, and all they did was increase their diversity of foods, different colors of vegetables, and all these things. 40% reduction in anxiety. So do this. While you're doing this, kind of understand and get some understanding of what you're going through, some framework for what you're dealing with, support for your emotions. I remember a number of summers ago, anybody watch America's Got Talent before? And so there's this 15-year-old girl playing guitar. She gets this thing called a golden buzzer, which means confetti erupts all over the stage. She goes to the finals. I'm all alone at house. Tears are pouring down my face, and I'm like, what's going on? That's not a normal response when I'm alone watching TV, and I realized my anxiety was through the roof that week, and that was just my way of dealing with it. But referrals, psychiatry, have fun. And there's an incredible tension here between faith and psychology and all these other kinds of conversations. And while we're doing this, we grow our faith. And I just put a thing over spiritual disciplines, right? We pray, we read, we fast, we study, we give, we volunteer, all of those things. Your circumstance will never alter the character of God. God is God and we are not God. How about you say in this season, Jesus, let me see you. Teach me what I could learn in this season of my life. Feed your faith, grow your relationship with God in this time. And when I'm in a public environment like a business, I can't use this slide, but I put up soul and spirit, but these things are still good for us. Well-being, volunteering, and friends and family. If you come to the talk tonight or tomorrow night, when we talk about like media, people is the answer to so much of technology. The more friends we have, the more great human contact we have, the less technology will ever affect us. And what do we have to offer as the church, among so many other things? People. I love just being outside, standing by my booth and watching people come in, hug, and you're getting coffees, and there's chatting, and there's more babies than I've seen at any church in a long time. And mindfulness, there's nothing spiritual here. This is just breathing. But you have to delineate a bit. This isn't sitting in solitude. This isn't just, right, this isn't that kind of thing. This is just breathing. When you're anxious, you're probably breathing with your upper chest. Just breathe with your belly and feel the air go across the top of your nose. So how does our faith play a role in this? Henry Nouwen once said, our life is full of brokenness, broken relationships, promises, and expectations. How can we live with that brokenness without becoming bitter and resentful, except by returning again and again, and I would add in again and again and again, to God's faithful presence in our lives? Do we trust God is who he says he is? I mean, the truth is this, if I never get better, God is still God. Now, I'm going to say a line before someone says I'm speaking something over myself. I've been unwell for 13 years. I don't know if I'm going to be getting better. I'm not speaking something over myself. I'm just saying I've been unwell for a long time, and if I never get better, I'm okay with that. I still do everything I need to every day and pray every day for healing, but God is still God if I get better tomorrow or I never do. I spent a long time in a kind of theological debate of why. And then I read a book by Richard Winter, and he just says there's 5 reasons we suffer. The first 3 are the main ones, but you got to address the last 2. Number 1, we're caught up in a fallen world and we're deeply affected by it. Genesis 3 is at play. If I had to just walk around the room and hand you a mic, each of you could probably tell me something happened in the past 5 years, 5 months, 5 days that's tragic and horrible. Accidents and death and pain, and the list goes on. We live in the now, but the not yet. We are not yet in the place of no pain and no suffering. Number 2, we live with the effects of others' sins. My best friend was killed, I think it's 19 years ago now, by a drunk driver. We live with that forever because someone else made a decision and it affects us. We live with our own sinful nature. My friends, my family, everyone, interventions. I always thought, like as a Christian leader, I'd be the one intervening. Suddenly I was the one being intervened on, if I'm saying it correctly. And people kept saying, you got to slow down. I'm like, I'll be okay. I just need to make it to March 1st, 2012. And I did, and then everything fell apart. I was wrong. I still wish I could go back. Now, the truth is this. I think I have a fallacy in my argument. Even if I went back, whether it was teaching full-time, speaking full-time, whatever, I still think I probably would have had a burnout and breakdown. Now, number 4, we either talk about often too much, too little, but there is a spiritual realm. And if you want to begin a conversation on this, then I always say Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong went to the moon, to which someone shouted out he didn't recently. That's another whole conversation I'm not having at church. Neil Anderson wrote a book called The Bondage Breaker. But a wonderful beginning conversation. I'll never forget, I'm at a church, my water bottle was here, and I uncrossed my legs and knocked it over, and someone said, what do you think Satan was trying to do to you? And I'm like, I knocked my water bottle off. Like, I think we can take these things a little too far sometimes. And God's discipline and discipleship. There is verses in the Bible. God tests people to know what's in their hearts. God tests, like, it's good for me to be afflicted. I am not saying God gives anyone cancer or mental health, but there's verses they're there, and we have to look at them and address them. I posted Thomas Merton's prayer of abandonment all over my house. Paraphrase, God, I have no idea what's going on, but I trust you. This was just one of these things I just every day just went back to. And recently I read, anybody know Joni Eareckson Tada? You know that name? This is her Bible called the Suffering Bible. So this is an actual Bible with a topical context of suffering throughout it. It's interesting, if anyone in the room is like me who has a suffering journey, it's interesting what you read even through Scripture. I'm reading the book of Lamentations, Malachi, Job, Ecclesiastes. Like, it's interesting how Old Testament prophets and things connect with you that other times they wouldn't. So what did I need? I needed someone to listen to me, someone to sit with me. Now, I'm going to put up a slide of what I got, and I'm going to assume every one of you, and this is my struggle always here, how do I try to equip you to be better without shaming us from what we've done? We've all said these things, all of us. And so the question just is how do we be better? And I would say each of these things for me were a bit of a whack-a-mole. Everything happens for a reason. Now, I would put forth, I don't believe this is biblical or even Christian. This is more actually Islam. I would say this is determinism. If this, then that. I can't tell you how many people came into my house and said, everything happens for a reason. And I asked, what reason? And they went, I don't know. And then they left. In that moment, was I in a better place? Or do I get on my knees and go, God, what is the reason I haven't been a husband or father? What is the reason I've canceled 150 talks? What is the reason? So even if you believe this, please don't say it to someone because it's devastating. Don't just say, don't be anxious about anything. First off, we can have a theological discussion on what that word means because it's probably more worry. And even worry, some of you are worriers. You don't just stop, that's just kind of a bit of a predisposition some of us have. Are you still reading your Bible? People say this to me a lot. I'm like, are you saying if I stop reading my Bible, God did this to me? And then they're like, oh, they don't know what to say, right? Then that's not what they meant. Words from God. One lady said to me, God audibly told me what's wrong with you. And I'm like, now I grew up Baptist. Now I married a Pentecostal and I live, third of my world is in the Pentecostal church. So I'm happy to listen to this. She said, it's from all your third world travels to speak. It's the lead paint in their hotels. I said, I speak most of my life in Canada, 99%, and I like Hampton Inns because they have a good breakfast. You know what she did? She didn't say, I'm sorry, my discernment might be off. She turned around and walked away from me. And that was the hardest thing. Like 1 second before the God of the universe spoke to you about me, I just told you my reality and then she just left. The one that always gets me, a woman in my church walked up to me as I come into church very early. I sit in the corner over here. And when I came in, I sat down, a woman walked up and she said, can I tell you something and not hurt you? And I said, yes, and I don't know. And then I laughed and I went, go ahead. She said, when you came in the door, you were dressed in a full army fatigues, top to bottom. And she said, son, the war is over, but you can't find your way home, can you? And to this day, it just, I get that one. If you need any help, let me know. Please don't say this to anyone, just give them help. Amy Simpson wrote a book called Troubled Minds, and she calls mental illness a non-casserole illness. I fell off my bike 4 years ago, let's just say this. I broke every bone, 9 bones, ribs. I'm 6'6", falling off a bike, I'm 7 feet high. I didn't even get my arm out. So anyways, nice, awesome orange cast. I posted online. Well, the meal train started immediately. When I'm at home with a breakdown, struggling with anxiety and depression, anybody want to guess if the meal train kicked into gear? God won't give you more than you can handle is not in the Bible. God won't tempt you more than you can handle is in the Bible. Throughout the scripture, we see people with more than they can handle. D.A. Carson calls this the illegitimate totality transfer, where we read every possible meaning of a word into a single use of a word. 2 Corinthians 1, 8-11, Paul and his companions say, "We were so utterly burdened by our strength that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we had felt we'd received the sentence of death." Paraphrase, we're so much beyond ourselves in this moment. And when me and many of you are beyond that, we turn back and lean on our God. Is there sin in your life? I'm always like, yeah, lots. Then they don't know what to say. Because you understand the thought process. Have you tried praying, Satan and the demonic, you will be okay? Well, at least, I think it was last summer, someone said to me, well, at least you don't have terminal cancer. And I lost my breath because I thought I was doing really well. And suddenly I'm like, maybe I'm not doing as well as I thought because terminal cancer is really bad. And it took me days to come down from that. Don't say snap out of it. Don't say be tougher. Don't say be dramatic. Here's what you can say. How are you today? Today changes everything. I can answer today. One of my favorite is a friend of mine. I see him every few months at church. He says, I got 5 minutes. Give me an update on your health. Say, I'm praying for you. Now, this has become cliche. Pray for you. It's kind of like, we'll do lunch. If we didn't book lunch, we're not doing lunch. If you're going to pray for someone, I use an app called Evernote. I have a folder. I would put your name and your text and what I'm going to pray for, whether you have a physical thing in your, but don't just tell someone you're going to pray for them and then not do it. Say, I'm sorry you're going through this. Say something. Do you know how many people have never talked to me about my journey in 13 years? How many friends are not in my life anymore? Give them a hug, and I now need to say ask first. Someone rushed over to someone and gave them a hug. But you know the people you can hug and not hug. It's okay to give someone a hug. You don't need an answer. Sit with them. Ask, how is your struggle going? I'm at a church in Alberta, and I hadn't been there in a few years, and I knew that the children pastor and the worship pastor, she had 2 jobs, lots of jobs, she's struggling with breast cancer. And so I'm there with the youth pastor, and I said to the woman when she came by, hey, how's your breast cancer? And she burst out crying, and the youth pastor punched me in the shoulder nicely and said, you can't ask people that. And she looked at him and said, he's the first person to ask in 2 years. How on earth do we call ourselves a community and sing these amazing songs about love and faith and life and God, and no one has asked you in 2 years how your cancer journey? Talk about something else. I don't want to talk about my health all the time. I want to talk about sports and many other things. And you're looking at the last one going, shawarma's healing? Yes. Darkest day of my life. Remember, suicide is not wanting your life to end, it's wanting your pain to end. And I never crossed that line, but I lived on it. Darkest day I ever had, my wife's gone, my kids were in high school, and I'm sitting on the living room floor all alone. Alice in Wonderland, my mind's going down a rabbit hole, and I get a call from one of my board members. His wife says, hey, you want a shawarma? And she pauses and says, I'm getting you a shawarma, I'll be there in a while. If you're ever in Ajax, there's a place called Pita Delights. They're Christians from Nazareth, Arab Christians from Nazareth. I walk in and they call me Brother Brett. She passed a little bag through the door, I took a bite. I remember just smiling and going, there's something about food. Do you know what I miss most from my Baptist roots? Potluck Wednesdays. There was just something special about people and eating together as a community. So when someone you love is struggling, bring them what they want, whatever that might be. 2 Corinthians 1:3, who comforts us in all our troubles. Why? So that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Some thoughts and we're done. It's funny, I set my alarm for 45 minutes and then I realized I set it for 45 hours. So I've been very confused, but I now understand why I have 44 hours and 23 minutes left. Some thoughts. Please advocate for each other. It's okay to stand in the gap, to help, to support. Dr. Dan Siegel says we need to help and let's change children to everyone. We need to help everyone understand that the clouds of their emotions can and will roll on by. For some of you, you just barely got into church today. I'm glad you're here. It doesn't mean tomorrow will be that way. It might, but each day is a new day. And if one door isn't working, choose another. If one med isn't working, choose another. If one counselor's not working, choose another. Bruce Coburn, if you're again a little older, who leads worship in Southern California, by the way, I hear now. Bruce said, to kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight. This is a fight, this is a war, and what do I see often? Nothing. Every day, this is a battle, and as Winston Churchill said during war, never, never give up. So do the best you can until you know better, and hopefully today gave you a little bit of ideas and thoughts on how to do better. My website is just my name, Brett Ullman. I got a table out there with cards if you want it. I have around 1,500 links on my website. This is a series I did called Control the Controllables. I'm at a church. It's an evening session. A young 14, 15-year-old girl walks up. She's cradling a Venti Starbucks coffee, her hand's shaking, and she says, so I've had a long journey. And I'm like, what do you mean? She says, well, my pastor says I'm demonized. And I'm like, okay, that's a big conversation there. And then she said, and my doctor and mom are putting me on mental health medications tomorrow for my anxiety. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. This is so much. And then I just said, it's a decaf, right? Like, it's a decaf coffee. And she said, oh no, caffeinated. I said, how many caffeinated coffees do you have a day? If you said, Brett, how many coffees do you have a day? 2. I don't need to process it. She began to look up and to the left. She's counting and thinking, and in my mind, I'm like, how many coffees do you have a day? She said, I think 6 or 7. There's a principle I live by and I counsel by, which is the principle of Occam's razor. Occam's razor is the simplest answer is usually the answer. Her pastor went straight to spirituality. Her doctor and her mom went straight to medications. No one said, are you drinking that, like anyone drinking 6 or 7 coffees a day? I had a client recently and I asked how many coffees a day, and he said, do you mean pots or cups? Anyways, there's so much information on the website. In the dead center is my Amazon A, where there's you'll find all the books that I suggest for all my topics, but you'll find them on mental health here. My YouTube channel is filled with conversations on mental health and others, and I have 3 full talks you can find on topics like mental health, pornography, and dating. I do have 2 different online courses you can find. Your church has Right Now Media. I know some of you have gone through my parenting course. My talk, Men Navigating Everything, is also on it. It's a 10-part series for men. Now, if my wife was here, my wife always says, Brett, this is good for anyone. And I always am like, honey, I'm never doing a talk called Women Navigating Everything by Brett Ullman. The mansplaining that would happen in an hour talk is staggering. Anyways, it's for men. Could you as a woman get something out of it? Sure. And the talk I'm doing tonight and tomorrow night, I filmed this week into a small group series. So we're just in the editing process of that. If you're a reader, I have some book suggestions. And the few on the top, these are actually non-faith-based books, but The Reality Slap is my favorite conversation from a counseling standpoint. And The Anxious Generation, if anyone's read this, is looking at technology and its effect on media. Lost Connections is a really interesting one. As we've gotten older, we've lost connection with purpose and people, and I would add in faith and others. And The Ripple Effect, Sleep, Eat, Move, and Think Better. And I wrote a huge book during COVID. This is actually 7 books in one. Realizing people don't read anymore. Almost 60% of North Americans read 0 books last year. And so 7 chapters on parenting, 9 chapters on everything else, with mental health being the biggest. And there is a study guide. And if you're an Audible person, I read my own book. 2 slides and we're done. One of my therapists once said this to me during my journey. Put this everywhere in your house. Great courage with great care. Great courage. For some of you, it took everything in you just to get to church today. And I'm like, I'm glad you're here. Great courage. Go to work, go to church, do the things you need to, and then great care. What are the things that you need to do? Like, I speak 4 times when I'm here, so I pull back in the afternoons and I go for a walk and I do the things to recharge myself. What works for you? And it should be faith and time with Jesus. It should be family. It should be friends and exercise, and the list goes on. I love Body, Mind, and Soul. I love Body, Mind, and Soul because it's something all of us can do. And we don't know where answers will be until you begin to walk through these things. Now, I end every talk that I do with a conversation that I read in a book by John Maxwell. He says this: when you are challenged by anyone ever, choose one thing. In every sermon you ever hear from Edwin or anyone at the front or any environment you're in where there's a teaching moment, what is one thing you can take from it? And then in the book, John says, but then you only have 3 days to do something about it. So today is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. By Wednesday, I'll give you Wednesday night. if you haven't made a bit of a move forward in anything you want to move forward in, statistically, you never will. And if all it is that a speaker speaks and we listen and smile, say amen once in a while, like the goal is that this is a moment to get better connecting our ancient faith with our modern world with a conversation on mental health. I answer all my own emails, but I'll be out back chatting for as long as anyone wants, and hopefully I'll see some of you tonight as well. Thank you so much for the chance to speak on this tough conversation. Have a great day. Bye-bye.